Hi everybody, welcome to this video where I'm going to show how to paint a barrel. So this is part of the tutorial bundle for how to draw environments. And I think it's really good to start practicing a prop. So a barrel like this is a term that is used in animation or games for an object. So this object is a barrel, and I think it's really great to start learning how to how to paint an object like that. So let's start with this this barrel, and we're going to start with this step. So up here, so I'm using Adobe Photoshop, but you can also use other apps you like. The kind of stuff I'm using, you can basically also find that in other apps. So sometimes it's really cool to paint on white, but most of the I think it's actually most of the time better to start with a background color. So I start with this color. So this is the sketch, and the sketch can be rougher than this. You're free to follow this video with this sketch. So I put this sketch in a folder, Ctrl-G in Photoshop, and I make a new layer under it, and I put that layer also in the folder. And then with the lasso tool, L on the keyboard, or here this one, I'm going to make the selection of that. Oh, no, I only want the wooden part. So I'm going to block in the main colors. So start with this brown color. So go here, down here, following this line. Go here, and you can also use a brush or any other thing. I like to use this lasso tool, and I'm going to select that part. It's not a problem because I'm going to draw over it, and I hold Alt, and what that does is that creates this option where you can make the selections also like this, and when I'm going to draw like this here, then it follows your pen. So I'm using a Wacom pen here, but you can also use a different kind of tablet. I recommend getting a tablet. You don't need a fancy screen, but maybe you can just use the cheapest Wacom tablet there is if you're starting out. That's really decent. That's also how I started. So I've made this selection. And I filled this color layer. So now I'm making a layer on top. And I'm going to select here this part. Just like this. And why it's good to start with props is basically for environments, you're doing the same thing as you're doing with props. But yeah, it is slightly different, but the main basics are actually the same. So it's really good to start practicing with props because you can make them faster than you can make in a whole environment. Then you can really focus on basics. So I want to use this color here. And how I like to pick my colors is with this HSB. You have also all these other ones, but I like this one because you can determine the color, the hue, and here with this you can determine the saturation and the brightness. Saturation is how strong the color is. Brightness is how dark or light the color is, and hue is for the color. And what I'm also using a lot is the eyedropper to select the color I want to use. Now let's make this auto selection, following the sketch. You can name the layers if you want. It's not per se necessary, but you could. So follow this line. And then like this. Now we've like this, and we could make the sketch lighter. So I also get a lot of questions on, yeah, how do you remove the lights? What I do is I start with this sketch on 100%, and then I drop the transparency until I don't need it anymore. And then I simply drop it off. But you will see that in a bit. So then the next step is secondary colors. So let's put that here. So now we're going to add some secondary colors. What you can do, you can take this color and make it lighter, maybe a little bit yellow. So I like to play around with the UI. I don't like it to make it just simple lighter, but also adds the UI a little bit. And then simply add this selection again. And again, it's wood, so it doesn't have to be perfect, these lines. It can be a bit irregular. Could be that it depends a little bit on the style you want, but it doesn't have to be perfect, and you can always change it again later. And let's fill it. So we've made this, and we can start adding here these light colors. So what you can do is I made a selection with Control-click on this thumbnail, making a new layer, taking a hard brush, and for painting, I basically use most of the time I'm just using these basic round brushes. So you really don't need anything necessary for. I personally, sometimes when I sketch, I like to use, it's something I now just started doing, a bit of more rougher brushes. So you get that, that look. But most of the time for painting, I'm just using a round brush. But you could make some rougher brushes, but I'm going to talk about it later. Here with this one, I really want to start really basic. And I would recommend people who are starting out to start with just the basic brushes, because you can already do, or you can actually do everything you want with just those basic brushes. I can understand that people think you need these really fancy brushes. That is some kind of the trick, and etc. And also that people maybe wonder, how do you get perfect lines? And that's just the simple answer is basically it's just by practice. And you need to start practice a lot and get that confidence to get those nice lines and a muscle memory. The only way is to get that by practice. I think I developed that by sketching every day in my sketchbook. And sketching is a really great way of becoming more confident with your lines. So here, adding these cracks or edges, however you want to call them. So here, you can see I don't even zoom in. Sometimes I do zoom in, but it's actually quite dangerous, and it also takes longer if you're going to zoom in. Things can really take a lot of time. So it's faster to just draw it. It also depends a little bit on how detailed you want the stuff to be, but it's not necessary. You don't always need to zoom in. And if you do zoom in too much, you get way too much details everywhere. And that's also not for the best result. So here. So slowly I'm adding these kind of shapes. So basically you're setting everything up on separate layers, and it makes it easier to add shadow to all the elements later. So you can see again, I make the selection again with control click on that thumbnail. And then on a new layer on the top of that, I start adding here this light, like this here, this light side, on this side. And we can always change this stuff later on. But you want to start with, putting these things on. It's just for blocking. Sometimes I start with values. I will also show it later. But yeah, sometimes I like to start with values because then you can just focus on putting those layers down. But now there's not that many colors, so I think it's better to work directly now. So we finished this second step. And we can go on to the fourth step. And now the fun is going to begin, because now we can start adding in gradients. And first, it's important to determine the light direction. So let's say the light is coming from this angle. So let's say it's sunlight. So that means that light here. So maybe it's a lamp in the distance. So there's this light is hitting this way. So once we know that, we can start drawing in the shadow. And you can also practice, take an apple, put a lamp on it, and see how the light works on that apple. So here now we've this, and we can start selecting this layer. And then I press this button, the alpha lock. And you also have this in Procreate or any other program. You have these. You can select that you can paint within this shape. So for example, now I'm painting in this shape. If I turn this off, you paint on the layer, but I want to paint in the shape. That's why I've made all those shapes. So what I'm using here is just basically just a round brush, but I make it soft with the hardness. So and I have transfer on, so it's pressure sensitive. So I'm sure that's good. So now we select this layer and this icon, and I select this lighter color, and then I basically just start adding some light. And here it's again a bit darker. What I also often do is that here we have some bouncing light, like there. So this is coming from the ground onto the surface because light bounces on and off things. So there's also the shadow of this this metal edge. So make the brush a little bit smaller and try to see if you can make a nice shadow for it, something like this. Let's do it here. And I like to do it all on one layer, like this here. So for the shadows, I try to use a little bit warmer light. So here you can see this, it's almost more towards the yellow. And when I'm going here, it's more going to the red. So most of the time I give my shadows a little bit more of a cooler or a warmer tint. It's depending on what I want, but I like to shift this hue a little bit when I make some shadow to it. So here now let's do these other parts. You can see this color is a little bit more purple. So what you can basically do is select this color and slide it more towards the purple. See if it's nice, of course. And see if it works. This here, darker. Maybe make this part a little bit lighter, like this here. And then we're going to the next part. Let's make this lighter. Yeah, something like this. And let's make this part a little bit darker. Just a little bit. What's next? So, all right, this shape. Here the top. Oh, this icon. We want to make it light, like this here. And then here, I actually didn't do it here, but some shadow here, some light here. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect or anything, but because we always can change it a little bit later. But the better you can get it in this stage, the more quicker you are. So now we're going to add some shadow here. I think it's too grayish. Let's add a little bit more saturation. Here I've made this color a little bit more shadow, a little bit warmer. Put this here. So the shadow is coming from this side. Yeah. So this part is too light. So take the selection, make a selection like this here, and I'm starting to make this a bit lighter or darker. Yeah, that works. Let's make those edges a little bit darker. Here these edges could be darker as well. So here you can see I'm changing stuff. So do I like it? You can turn off the sketch to see if it's going to work, yes or no. Yeah, this could work. And then we can move on to the next stage. We can actually turn off these lights. And let's move on to the next stage, and that's adding texture and some more details. So let's put this here. And let's make this bigger. And we can actually turn off the sketch now. We will leave the sketch here so we can always turn it back on. And let's start adding this shadow layer on top, this cast shadow it's called. So with the selection tool, make the selection like this. Take my soft brush and I take this color and make it purple. Changing this stuff a little bit. Here and try to find the lights I'm using. Try to see if you can find the colors I'm using with these tools. That could be a bit good practice to get as close to my colors as you can. And after that, you could actually check it if it's working. Check it. So here, with these edges, this thing. Oh, this works. Put it here. Yeah, that could work. So I'm going to add a layer here on top of the boot. And making this brush hardness on 100% of the brush tip size, making shape dynamics, so I can make these nice lines. So I put this layer, I think I will put this layer on multiply. Take this brownish color, and now I can start drawing in these textures. So just like this. And you start drawing in some nice curving lines. So here I'm drawing through so that this point connects nicely with this point. Or else it could look a little bit weird. So maybe if you think sometimes the colors are getting too dark, don't worry about it, because you can change that later. Just trying to find some interesting lines. So here, and here this goes around this edge. So here, see how this goes around the surface, right? So it's going here, and then it's going down like this here, and then here another line. It's going like this. Maybe we could add another thin line here. So try to play around a bit with thickness, thin lines, thick lines, etc. So here's a line that's going like this here. And a line going here. Then there's this line. Oh, I don't want to get these two lines together. Control Z, maybe I put it a bit higher like this. And you can also make the brush bigger. Then you can do something like this. It's a little bit too much. Here. And like this here. And then go in here. And this edge going down here. And like this here. Oh, I can see I copied the wrong side actually. So let's remove this. And you can also make your own texture, because of course these are actually quite random ones. But then now I'm copying the original, so you could do that. But you can also try to make your own version. Or maybe instead of a barrel, you can draw a crate or something and use the same colors or not. So I also sometimes get the practice how to learn best to draw and to paint. You can learn a lot by copying, so following the steps and the examples, what I do. So feel free to use that. You can practice all you want with my drawings. Yeah, of course, you don't use it commercially. And if you want to show it off, credit me or any other artist you're learning from. But you can learn a lot by trying to copy this exactly and try to understand how it's actually made. And after that, you can try to create your own version. That's also how I learned to draw. We all started somewhere, right? So put down here. 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 So take your time for this, put on some music, or if you want, you can also put on a podcast, or sometimes watch simple TV shows or something, not too complex, or else it's distracting. Sometimes I put on some back noise, because I also have some concentration problems when it's absolutely silence. It's hard for me to concentrate. Also, actually making these videos also is always it's not exhausting or anything. I think it's fun to do, but it takes a lot of energy, because I need to be, I'm so focused on and thinking on all these things. And when I just put on an for example, an old TV show or something, yeah, I'm more relaxed doing this. But I think it's actually best to do these kinds of things in silence, but then you really need to have a good concentration. It's always something I have trouble with, and I think a lot of people could recognize with that. So that's why I'm saying that. So I'm just adding here these kinds of shapes, these textures. Oh, I didn't put this layer on multiply. So what multiply does is takes these pixels and makes the pixels beneath them darker. For example, here you see. And now we've did this, and I think it looks great, but maybe it's oh, I want to do that. So you take this eraser and just make it. Let's make it a little bit lighter. It's a bit too much. Something like this here. Yeah, this could work. It's a little bit lighter, like this here. And yeah, then we've did the texture part. So let's take this off again, and let's move on to highlights. So remove this one, make this bigger. Let's see, so here these are the highlights. So I can make one layer on top of it. And you can just pick the color, but what you can also do is put in an overlay and adding some white, and then you can, here you can see you get these highlights from that there. Let's see if that works. Sometimes it's too hard, but instead of using that, what I did before with the multiply and overlay, does basically the opposite of that. So you can create these highlights. Just maybe add some here, maybe some small things here. You could also use it actually for creating scratches like this here. We here get this scratch effect. I think it's actually pretty nice. So maybe let's add some scratches. So here and here. So this not always works. So I would recommend to play that around it. Let's see if that also works with the builds. Maybe. Also change the color a little bit. Yeah. It's getting a bit too warm. Does this work? No. It's too warm. So what I want to do is make a new layer. Just take this color. Yeah, I think that works better. So this also, it's you have all these different textures. So for example, this metal is more shinier than this, right? So I don't want to make this wood too shiny. I think this, how it looks now, it looks quite shiny. So it feels quite new, and it's maybe there's maybe some coating on top of it. So here, just on some spots, adding some highlights. Watch out for not being too much. So try it out, and you can always bring it a little bit back with the eraser. So make this a little bit lighter. This part here. Here, this. Let's make this lighter. This here. This light. This light. So just try to determine where you want to have these points. So the light is coming from this side, right? We add some here at this edge as well. Yeah, that looks nice. So eventually all these details, yeah, will help. And now we can start drawing in some highlights here and there. A little bit here and there. Just keep adding. And again, if I'm going too fast for you, feel free to pause this video and take these steps slowly. Let's start here. Adding. Here you can see that I use the color picker. And feel free to make the lights lighter or darker if you need to. I always try to get the saturated look to my drawings because that works really well for cartoony. Try to avoid getting, yeah, and that's funny because now it's a lot of brown, but I'm trying to avoid to get these really muddy colors. Let's add also a highlight here, make this a little bit lighter. Let's make this edge a little bit harder. So also try to think about edges. Does that edge need to be hard or not? Let's make this a little bit darker. We can do it later. So now we've did this step. We've added the highlights. We can move on to the next step. Adding some details. Oh, here I actually added some scratches and stuff on the metal. Here, let's move this here, and here you can already start seeing that's already getting more to the final the final drawing, right? So I actually make this part a little bit lighter there. Like this. Yeah, I think it's a little bit too red, exactly, compared to that one. So let's make this a little bit light. Yeah, I think that works better. But of course, those highlights, it also need to be a bit lighter. So maybe selecting these highlights, pressing this button again, making these lighter. Here it is. Yeah, this works. So yeah, let's keep adding some details. Take this brush like this, and we can start adding in some dots here, like this here. Try to think about how it goes all around those shapes. Maybe again using the soft eraser to add a little bit of gradients like this here. Maybe you can paint in some details. So you can see I'm just using this rough brush, and that's, my opinion, always works fine because a lot of times you would see this not this zoomed in, right? So I also actually used a shadow here. You can use selection here. Just make selection of where you want to have the shadow of this part. Take a brush, softer, put this on multiply, and we want these cool purplish shadows. Something like this. And we've added the shadow there. And let's add some details. spots on that metal. You can paint them just in like this here. Maybe here, darker edge like this here. So when I'm painting, I really like to work a little bit of rough, not too perfect, but to have this painterly feel. With these holes, take this light color here. It's a little bit too much. And just trying to find out some stuff you think that works well or not. This part's a little bit darker. Like this here. This it's a little bit too much. You can just go over with this color to get that effect we want. And like this, you can just you can add as many details as you like. What you can also do is make a layer on top and maybe make some parts a little bit darker, like this here. So it's getting that occlusion shadow. Occlusion shadow is when stuff gets close to other. For example, if you hold your fingers, you press your fingers next to each other, then you get these dark edges. Now erase it here, like this. Then here as well. Now I see here this shadow, these edges are still hard. So what we could do is we can filter, I think we could filter blur, Gaussian blur. We can make these edges a bit softer with this, this tool, like this here. So now this is a bit harder. So now we've did this part and we can move on to the next, the last part here, adding some glows and contrast. And that depends a little bit if you want. You can actually leave it as this if you want. So what I do, I select all these layers except the shadow layer, but duplicate it by dragging it to this plus, then Control E. So I merge them together. So I have all these layers together. Then I turn that layer off with a folder and put a mask on top of it. So what I basically do is I take the silhouette of the shape and I create a mask out of it in Photoshop. So here that's this button with the selection. For example, if I make a selection, you can also draw the selection like this. And then if you press this button, you get that selection there. That's how I create these masks. And now we can start adding really easy some extra light, making things extra bright, etc. Using this soft brush. For example, picking this color, putting it onto overlay, and just draw on top and see if you like it. Maybe erase some parts. But if you don't want it, don't want it here, you can erase that. Then adding it here. Erase it here, maybe add a little bit here. Then add some light here. And you can also make a new layer. Put this on multiply. Get grayish, purple, grayish. To add some extra shadow there as well. And you can also use that to make some extra here, for example, overlay, pick some white. And make some extra. So this is really, now you get that really morning sun feeling. Maybe add some scratches a little bit. So you can determine how much of you want it. So that is basically how I paint these kinds of things and all the techniques I'm using. And I'm also using these techniques to draw the environments, but I will show that in the next videos. So you can use this sketch and try to make it step by step. You can try to play around, give it some different textures or something. Try to think about the materials I'm using here. But you can also create your own, make a bucket or create a chair or draw a crate if you want to have something more basic. And then that's really good practice. Maybe it's not that inspiring as to do as a whole environment, but it's actually really good practice because it's quicker to do than a whole environment, because an environment takes a lot of time. And this way you can really practice it fast. So yeah, thanks for watching and see you in the next video.